I want to start with this painting that was made by Oskar Schlemmer, who was on the faculty of the Bauhaus. And the painting is called The Bauhaus Stairway. And it depicts students going up the stairway at the Bauhaus in Dessau. And the thing that's incredible about this painting is that it really captures something about the Bauhaus, that it was a place that felt it was kind of inventing the 20th century. The Bauhaus was a school which only lasted from 1919 to 1933, so only 14 years. And it had two locations. It started out in Weimar, Germany, and it moved to Dessau. And in some ways, it's a very important school if you're an art student in the United States, because the ideas that were put together at the Bauhaus really influenced the way that art was taught here, and it actually, the way it was taught everywhere in the 20th century. So these students who look like kind of perfect, almost robotically perfect, beautiful, sleek avatars of some kind of future. In fact, one of the students appears to be levitating in the upper left-hand corner of the painting. As they're going up the stairs, they're illuminated by light, and it's an incredibly utopian scene, which really captures the high ideal of the Bauhaus, which was to somehow integrate art and industry, those two major forces in the culture, which designers had been struggling with and essentially trying to figure out how the 20th century would be defined by all of the shifts that had occurred in the century before, but to finally capture them and to find form for them and to express what the 20th century was supposed to be. I want to contrast that with this actual picture of a group of students, actually all of them women because they were in the weaving department, going up the stairway at the Bauhaus. And I think there are wonderful things about this picture that connect to that painting in terms of the students and their enthusiasm and the energy that's conveyed in this picture. You would never guess from the painting that women were actually forced into the weaving department because it was deemed a more appropriate place for women to put their artistic energies into. But despite that, it's still, I think, both documents capture the high ideals of the school. This is the logo from the first iteration of the Bauhaus in Weimar, where the sort of geometries of a set of straight lines and squares are used to create the letters that go around the crest of the school. It says Staatliche Bauhaus Weimar, which means something like State School of Bauhaus. It was in part sponsored by the Weimar government, the local province that the Bauhaus existed in. And the intention of the school was to educate students for the 20th century, for the idea that the kinds of skills that were going to be needed to enhance the use of and the expansion of design into architecture and into industrial design and product design, communications, that all of those things were integrated into an idea that art and architecture and design were on equal footing and were of equal importance. So another thing that the Bauhaus tried to do, or another way of explaining it, is that they felt that the craft of the 20th century would be design, and that the kind of translation of all various ideas about modern art experiences could be integrated into a new way of educating students. When you look at the very early-ish publications by the Bauhaus, one of the things that's interesting, and maybe not what most people expect to see, is a tremendous amount of very energetic hand-lettered announcements, like this cover of a portfolio of prints that were produced by various people connected with the Bauhaus, and the lettering is by Lionel Feininger, and it's very handcrafted, but it's clearly modern. It's kind of built out of the kinds of lines and forms that were connected with expressionism and other kind of graphic languages at the time. And it aligns with the kinds of woodcuts that Feininger, one of the early faculty, were connected with. And all of these graphic things represent a sort of energy and, again, a kind of sort of utopian hopes that the school would open up a new era of connection between the culture on one side and the way that artists fit into a society that was so framed by production, by mass production and mass communication.